The boy's bare feet made soft sounds against concrete where darkness breathed unsaid dangers. A slender youth stopped, feeling menace in the quiet that hung over crumbling avenues. Between twisted steel and grime, he discovered a figure scarcely holding onto life. Dread froze his blood. Still, something pulled him toward this wordless outsider. Her injuries appeared grave, crimson painting paths of a frantic, hidden fight. He shivered, questioning who had abandoned this fadding woman to chance in the Deadlands. Gripping his final canteen, he crouched near her with silent determination. In the dimming glow, his fingers quivered as he brought salvation toward her parched mouth. The woman choked, lids opening wide with panic as if escaping invisible nightmares. He retreated, pulse hammering, uncertain whether she was prey or concealed danger. A sharp crash sounded close by as though someone observed them from blackness. He swept his gaze across the passage, but only moving wreckage replied to his desperate search. The woman seized his forearm, feeble, shaking, muttering a caution he couldn't comprehend. Whatever pursued her, he understood, was nearer than he'd imagined. A silhouette stretched across the stones, reaching long beneath the fadding sky. He sensed its weight closing around them like a snare preparing to snap. The woman attempted rising but crumpled, begging with vision laden with mysteries. He recognized that aiding her meant entering a tale vastly larger than existence. Gathering nerve, he hauled her toward a fractured hideaway wrapped in fog. Somewhere at their backs, invisible footfalls rang out, measured, purposeful and nearing. The hideaway's corroded entrance groaned apart, exposing gloom thick with particles. He tugged the woman inward, praying shadows would screen them from harm. Her respiration turned rougher, each intake quaking with wordless urgency. The boy hunted for fabric, anything to stem the flow soaking her jacket. Beyond, leisurely footfalls traced loops like a hunter relishing its chase. His chest tightened with terror he'd never experienced before. The woman attempted talking, but only shards of fractured murmurs left her. Something regarding a double cross, an arrangement, and someone who wanted her eliminated. He didn't comprehend, but the alarm in her vision communicated plenty. Whoever stalked her wasn't merely lethal, they were near and resolute. A subtle metallic snap outside seized his breath. He touched a digit to his mouth, commanding her to remain voiceless. The stranger beyond drummed steadily as though signaling someone hidden. The rhythm was too even, too calculated to be chance. The boy glimpsed the woman whose vision expanded with instant awareness. She formed one term that paralyzed his veins. Hunter. His heartbeat roared as the drumming sharpened, more restless. They possessed only instants before detection destroyed their delicate refuge. He snatched a fractured glass piece resting in the soil near the barrier. Angling it gently, he directed its image toward the outer passage. A broad form stood unmoving, features obscured behind a charred mask. The form examined the debris with automated exactness, assessing. The boy dropped the glass, fearing even radiance might expose their position. The woman clasped his palm weakly, as if appreciative for his valor. A sudden blast echoed through the wasteland, launching creatures skyward. The masked form pivoted sharply, lured toward the disturbance like bait. The boy released relief, but the woman refused. This wasn't sanctuary. Whoever created that sound possessed their own threatening purposes tonight. Nothing regarding this darkness was coincidental. Every movement seemed planned. The boy swallowed roughly, knowing survival demanded more than concealment. He ripped segments from his tattered coat to wrap the woman's bleeding ribcage. She winced but agreed, trusting him more with every shaking instant. "Why do they hunt you?" he breathed, scarcely voicing the inquiry. Her response staggered him. "Because I discovered what I shouldn't have discovered." The statement bore significance, profound, filled with peril he couldn't yet grasp. Beyond, currents swept particles across iron fragments like spectral omens. The woman wrestled upright, clutching his shoulder for stability as she rose. Her knees trembled violently, each movement threatening collapse. He arranged himself near her, steering her through bent refuse. Every turn held darkness that appeared to move with concealed watchers. The atmosphere was dense with terror, as though the wasteland itself observed. The boy forced each inhale steady, refusing to surrender to panic. She indicated a remote spire, partially destroyed but still ascending high. "That's where everything began," she croaked, tone barely audible. The boy studied the spire emerging from the devastation. He didn't understand why, but something regarding it seemed frozen and corrupt. Approaching them meant advancing into peril, but remaining meant guaranteed doom. He agreed slowly. The sole route ahead was toward what was real. As they traversed in vacant plaza, a recognizable sound emerged. Drumming, weak, removed, yet resounding with unstoppable exactness through the ruins. The masked hunter had recovered their path again, narrowing the gap. The woman pressed him onward, though agony etched marks across her features. The boy strengthened his hold on her, refusing to abandon her. The spire's outline expanded larger, breathing mysteries in the current. A collapsed support obstructed their route, compelling them into a tight corridor. The passage barriers rose high, imprisoning them in its choking constriction. Darkness bent sharply here, as though concealing things better left unwitnessed. The woman halted suddenly, detecting something he couldn't yet perceive. Moments later, he detected it too. Gentle breathing, not theirs. Someone lingered in the black ahead, motionless and patient. The boy crouched, exploring the earth for something to shield them. His digits grazed a corroded bar, frozen and weighty in his trembling hold. He lifted it warily, refusing to stay defenseless in this horror. The woman leaned near, murmuring, "Remain behind me, regardless of what occurs." Footfalls approached, slow and calculated, resounding down the corridor. The boy raised the bar higher, terror sharpening into raw courage. A profile surfaced, compact, bent, advancing strangely through the black. For an instant he breathed relief, believing it wasn't the hunter. But then the form stepped nearer, exposing a looter's ravenous gaze. He sprang, but the boy swung the bar with surprising force. The collision sent him reeling backward, wailing in shock and suffering. He'd never battled before, yet instinct directed his every action. The looter snarled, grasping for him with frantic talon-like fingers, before he could seize him. The woman thrust him aside with her final power. The looter escaped, frightened by the sudden explosion of defiance. The boy supported the woman as she nearly fell from effort. Their triumph was momentary, but it purchased precious seconds of flight. They pressed ahead, each movement weightier than the previous. Haze twisted from fractured containers ahead, throwing strange forms in atmosphere. The boy shielded his nose, directing the coughing woman through the murk. The spire's gateway was near now, only a few ruins distant, but every sense screamed peril, compelling him to reverse. He compelled himself ahead, refusing to desert the woman who required him. Each stride toward the spire seemed like stepping into a snare. Within the spire was more frigid than the darkness beyond, disturbingly so. Barriers were inscribed with markings he didn't comprehend, harsh and uneven. The woman gazed at them, dread constricting her expression and vision. Someone branded this location, she breathed, tone shaking. The boy contacted one marking, sensing it throb faintly beneath his palm. Something primeval and threatening existed within these barriers. Illumination wavered overhead, though no energy should survive here whatsoever. The woman seized his shoulder, pressing him from the radiating markings. "Don't contact anything here," she cautioned, tone saturated with urgency. Every angle hummed with invisible powers vibrating through the foundation. He directed her deeper into the spire, despite his mounting alarm. At their backs, weak drumming returned, resounding nearer once more. A steel entrance locked closed behind them with a thundering reverberation. The boy rotated around, startled by the sudden confinement trapping them. The woman stabilized him, though terror still veiled her weakening vision. "Only one direction now," she murmured, indicating toward a tight stairwell. Frozen atmosphere drifted from above, bearing murmurs they couldn't interpret. He swallowed roughly, stepping first into the coiling blackness. The stairs whined with every hesitant footfall, ascending upward. Darkness extended unnaturally extensive across the tight barriers. The murmurs intensified, distorting between tongues he couldn't recognize. The woman leaned substantially against him, struggling to continue advancing. A sudden blast extinguished the weak radiance from beneath, trapping them. They ascended in blackness, directed only by instinct and urgency. At the summit, a pale chamber waited, illuminated by a single expiring lamp. The atmosphere seemed denser here, compressing down like an invisible burden. In the middle rested a grimy console, flashing with weak, wavering radiance. The woman staggered toward it, entering weakly with shaking fingers. "This is what they desire to erase," she choked in revelation. The boy stared as rows of concealed information saturated the fractured display. He didn't comprehend the digits and symbols pouring across the monitor, but he perceived the reality, something potent enough to murder for. The woman turned to him, vision blazing with exhausted resolve. "I must reveal this or everyone beyond there will suffer the consequence." He stepped near her, sensing obligations settle on his frame. They weren't merely escaping now, they were battling for something greater. A removed explosion rattled particles from the chamber ceiling overhead. The hunter had penetrated the spire, advancing in with lethal exactness. The woman pressed him to conceal, but he refused with defiance. He declined to abandon her solitary to confront whatever terror approached. He arranged himself near the gateway, clutching his bar firmly. Terror shook inside him, but he stood solid despite it. The footfalls intensified, resounding with the finality of judgment. The woman entered faster, urgency sharpening each keystroke. The boy prepared himself as the entrance handle twisted slowly. The chamber illumination wavered violently, darkness jerking across barriers. A profound automated tone seeped through the opening of the entrance. "I recognize you're inside. Surrender the device and perish swiftly." The boy stepped ahead, clutching the bar as his heartbeat hammered wildly. Particles drifted in the shaking beam of the expiring overhead lamp. The entrance groaned wider, exposing the masked hunter's looming form. Frozen steel glinted at his flank, suggesting the peril he bore. The woman whispered his name weakly, begging for him to remain concealed, but he refused, positioning himself between her and the advancing menace. The hunter paused, surprised by the compact form obstructing his route. His covering tilted, examining him with wordless, disturbing assessment. He maintained his position, though terror scraped its root up his backbone. Behind him, the woman entered desperately, hunting for final commands. The hunter stepped nearer, boots pounding like the rhythm of destruction. The boy didn't shift, his courage blazing brighter than his panic. He strengthened his hold on the corroded iron bar, refusing to retreat. The hunter lunged, steel grinding like a creature made of blades. He swung with all his power. The strike fractured his covering apart. Sparks exploded as he stumbled backward, stunned by his surprising strength. Behind him, the woman completed the final transmission, warning screaming alive. He seized her palm and ran as the collapsing spire consumed the hunter's cry. Particles swirled around them as they stumbled into the fading sunlight, breathless. The spire behind them crumbled in a violent roar, entombing the hunter forever. He turned to the wounded woman. Yet in her vision he now witnessed strength, not frailty. She whispered, "You rescued me in the reality. The world will recognize because of you." For the first occasion, he sensed the burden of what he'd accomplished, and the power he possessed hand in hand. They advanced toward the rising dawn, forever linked by the miracle of courage.